Oh, good thing you're not a doctor. I'd have to say it over and
Oh
over.
God.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, today's guest has written a wonderful best-selling book called The Freedom Master Plan that we're going to talk about. Her name is Mitali Deypurkaystha. I only have to say it once, thank goodness. We'll call her Mitali the rest of the show. And we're going to learn a little bit more about her book, how it can help you. But first, let's welcome her to the show. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. As always, your guest almost always is referred by another guest. You were referred by Katrina Fox, another fabulous guest. But before we get into the book, let's talk a little bit about you, Mitali, because I always want to know people's vegan or plant-based story, when they become plant-based, why, and how it's affected their life.
Right. Okay. Well, for me, it started with a little cat that turned up into my life unannounced. Well, she was announced, but I didn't want her. I'll be honest with you. I grew up in a typical Indian family. We don't really do pets. So I didn't have pets growing up. So it's not that I disliked animals. They just weren't in my life. Animals were things that were outside beings and humans were indoor beings. And that was my very limited viewpoint. And then my youngest sister wanted a cat. And my mother instantly went, no, we don't have animals in this household. And then she was only 14 years old at the time. She decided to go and create a petition. And she managed to get over 200 signatures from her school, including a headmaster and various teachers. And we just thought that's incredible. You know, the fact that a 14-year-old normal teenage behavior is slamming doors, you don't understand me, tantrums, that kind of thing. And we had this astute teenager who went and petitioned her school. And I told my mother, we need to reward this. So lo and behold, the cat turned up in our life. I was not very happy because I just thought there's going to be fur everywhere in the house, in my bed, everywhere. I was not interested. Within a few weeks, I just fallen in love with this ball of fluff. And I would just watch her. I would just watch her. I would observe her observing the rest of the family. And she would be so sentient. She would understand which member of the family really needed her the most that day. So did Monica have a bad day at school? That's my younger sister. Or was my mother having a tantrum about something? She would just be so aware. And I just thought, we've been lied to. You know, this idea that animals don't really understand, they're dumb, it's easy. That's how we can do what we do. We'll only enable ourselves to do what we can do to animals by telling ourselves, that's just the way it is. They don't really feel anything. They're not really sentient. We're the highest order of animal in the world. It's normal. And when you actually start to see how sentient they are, how much they understand, how much they can love, how much they can fear, how much they can emote, you can't do anything to them then. And then that sickening realization that cats don't even make it to the top 20 of intelligent animals on the planet. So that's when, you know, I just thought, I can't do this. So then I spent 3 years going down a path that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, where again, you try to fool yourself. So I did the whole, I'll just buy meat and dairy from organic farms or humane farms. And again, you're BSing yourself. So I went down that route for 3 years. But in the back of my mind, I knew that what I was doing was still wrong. It's a little bit like being a little bit racist or a little bit homophobic. It's like, it's still wrong. So it took me 3 years. And then finally, I put my big girl pants on and I went, this is it. I have to do it. That was back in 2012. And I haven't looked back since. And now I just think, why on earth didn't I do it earlier? But I think I've spoken to so many vegans now and they all say exactly the same thing. Why on earth did I not do it earlier? So yeah, that's my journey. It was a little cat who's still running around this place somewhere. I think she's asleep right now. She's still alive. And I even dedicate my book partly to her. And the Freedom Master, if you look at the dedication, it says to Isha and Kali, who's my cat that I emigrated from Thailand when I was living there. She passed away 2 years ago. That's her around my neck. So I carry her fur with me all the time to remind me of her. But I dedicate my book to these two cats because without them, I think I'd still be eating steak. I'd still be doing that thing of BSing myself that, oh, this is just normal. This is how it should be. I'd still be doing that.
Yeah. Had you ever heard of a vegan or a plant-based diet before this?
You know what? No, this is 2012, which doesn't sound all that long ago, but it's actually a sea change. Like in 2012, when I finally became vegan, I would go to restaurants and they would actually look at me and go, "What is that?" I even remember one gentleman thought it was some sort of intolerance. And he was so lovely, a lovely gentleman. He was like, "Oh my God, tell me what that is, and I'll make sure I won't put it in your." And I'm like, "It's not." I think he thought it was like a gluten or a lactose thing. And I was like, "No, it's not that." And I had to explain to him. Whereas now in 2022, even people who hate vegans know what one is, so that's progress. But yeah, I hadn't even come across that word, which is why now when I meet people who've been doing, I mean, you've been vegan for over 40 years, I'm just like, oh my God, that's amazing. Because you've been doing it, you were doing it at a time where even vegetarianism was weird, never mind veganism, or so. Well done.
Well, thank you. Did you notice any difference in how you look or felt when you made this switch?
No, not for the first, I would say 2-3 years. I was lucky because I come from an Indian background, a Bengali Indian background, and most of our diet is accidentally vegan. I call it accidentally vegan. A lot of the curries my mother would make, she wasn't thinking in terms of being a vegan. She didn't even know what the word vegan meant until I went vegan. But they were accidentally vegan anyway. So I just carried on. What I found myself doing was just eating more Indian food and less Western food. So for the first, I would say 3-4 years, I didn't notice. And then I think when I speak to a lot of vegans, we all come into the world via different routes. Some come into it for animal rights, like I did. Some people come into it for the health reasons. Some people come into it for sustainability and environmental reasons. But once we're all in there, we kind of all take on each other's viewpoints as well. So sort of 4-5 years into it, I started to meet some vegans who are really into it for health reasons. And then I started to make changes, and I really did see an improvement in my health there. But for the first 4 or 5 years, I was doing it for the animals. So I didn't really see a huge difference at that point.
Nice. You write in your book that you had a dream for a vegan normal. Can you explain what that means?
What I mean by that is when you when you search something on the internet and you kind of go down a rabbit hole a little bit. I do that quite often when I search something and then just go straight down the rabbit hole. And this is a couple of years ago. I watched a documentary on Netflix about slavery, and then I decided to search more. And then I start to find all of these old transcripts and books that were written, around about 1880, 1870, justifying keeping slaves, justifying racism. And that was the norm. And now look at us, a century, not even a century, I was going to say a century and a half. It's not even a century and a half there. Now it's just the idea is abhorrent to us. The idea that you would keep a human being as a slave, the idea that Black people are somehow less intelligent or a lower species than white people, it's abhorrent. So that's where I want veganism to be. And I know it's going to get there. I just want to get it there earlier. My goal is I want it to happen in my lifetime. And the reason why I became the vegan publisher is I just had this awful thought that what if I died before I saw it? I know it's going to happen. That, there is nothing in my mind that says it won't happen. Just I'm looking at the traction that veganism has gained just in the last decade since I've been vegan. It's going to happen. We're getting to a vegan world. My fear is I'm in my 40s. I'm not saying that's old or anything, but I'm not young either. I would say I'm at the midpoint of my life. And my fear is that it's going to happen, but I will pass away before it happens. And my goal as a vegan publisher is what can I do to contribute to that movement so it happens faster.
Yeah. Well, you wrote in the introduction that activism through business is the key to veganizing the world.
I truly believe in it. I really, really believe that, because something I have a lot of non-vegan friends. I'm the only vegan in my family. So I'm surrounded by non-vegans and they're lovely people. It's not like people sit there and they think, yes, I've got a dead cow on my plate, I'm so happy. They're not thinking That's the thing. That's the key. They're not evil. They're just literally not thinking. That phrase, cognitive dissonance, that's what's happening. If you give somebody viable alternatives that is as good, if not better in some cases, and is also financially viable, most people just automatically make the right choice. If you give somebody product A and product B, and everything else is equal, but product A has been made at a sweatshop and product B has been made fair trade, they're just automatically going to pick product B. So I really believe that we've got so far in activism, and I've got a number of vegan activist friends who I absolutely adore. They're doing some incredible work. But the next stage where it's going to become that vegan normal world has to come from business, has to come from enterprise. That's where the real change is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So in the introduction of this wonderful book, you have a section called Who is this book for? So who is this book for?
I would say it's usually for entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders of non-profits or charities, anyone who needs to get more eyeballs on what they do. Okay, because whether you have a business or a non-profit or a charity, then if you think about it, everything hinges on visibility. It's all about visibility. People need to know what you're doing for you to be able to be successful at it and make the biggest impact you can make. So I would say, if you need more eyeballs, if you're doing things like, if you're doing social media marketing, if you're engaging in things like search engine optimization, these are all activities that you undertake to get more visibility, to get more eyeballs on what to do. So to be more discoverable. If you're doing that, then writing a book is a great way to ignite all of that, because it takes your visibility to the next level.
Yeah, nice. So one of the things in your book, I took some notes. You said that according to statistics, 20% of businesses fail in the first year and 50% of businesses fail by 5 years. Can your book help people overcome those odds so that they can get their vegan business to survive and actually be profitable?
Well, it's interesting. Those statistics are actually for businesses. I couldn't even find statistics for vegan or plant-based businesses. There isn't any statistic there. And I would say, Chef AJ, that it'd probably be worse for vegan businesses, because vegan, plant-based, ethical, sustainable businesses, we have an extra layer that other businesses don't, which is we're trying to do the right thing. And sadly, we still live in a world that trying to do the right thing usually costs more. I've got a number of vegan entrepreneur friends, and them trying to source ingredients or source products that have been ethically made or sustainable usually costs them more than if they just didn't care and they just went for the cheapest one available. So they have an extra. So I would say that is just a general statistic for all businesses. So yes, the reason why I believe a book can make a difference is I used to be a copywriter and a ghostwriter since 2013. So I've turned my hand at writing all kinds of business content. So I've written articles, email sequences, sales pages, landing pages, print adverts. Anything you can think of at some point, I've turned my hand to it. And I've ghostwritten 7 books as well. And when I was thinking about what do I specialize in, because I really wanted to specialize, I found myself that I was kind of stretching myself too thin, and I kind of knew a little bit about email marketing and a little bit about landing pages. And just thought, I really would like to specialize in one thing and be known for one thing, but I wasn't really sure what it was going to be. So I started to analyze all my work and I have great relationships with all of my ex-clients. So I started to contact them and say, well, tell me, all the different pieces of work that I've done, which has been the piece of content that's made the biggest difference. And I'll be honest with you, Chef AJ, I actually thought the answer was going to be sales pages, because I thought that's the one with the big old buy button. So surely that's the thing that's going to make the biggest difference. But to my surprise, my clients were coming back and saying the book is the thing that made the biggest difference, because the book has allowed me to get on all these podcasts. It's allowed me to become a keynote speaker, which then all of that visibility trickles down to being able to charge more for what you do. So although the sales page is more direct, as in that's the thing with the buy button, overall, if you look at the space of a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's the book that's made the biggest difference, because it makes you stand out. Before the pandemic, I used to do these in-person talks with small groups of people. And I would do this exercise where I'll get everyone to stand up. And I would say, please stay standing up if you have a website. And nearly everybody would stay standing up, because who doesn't have a website if you have a business? And then I'd say, okay, please stay standing up if you use social media for your business. And again, most people will stay standing up. Then I'll say something like, please stay standing up if you have business cards. And again, some people may sit down, but most people staying standing up, especially in person, because we're at an in-person event. And then I'd say, okay, stay standing up if you've written a book. And there's all this shuffling and people sitting down, and, and maybe one or two people are still standing. And it's quite interesting that normally what happens is the other people end up just bursting into spontaneous round of applause. And I always say, isn't that interesting? Would you applaud somebody for having a website, or would you applaud somebody for using LinkedIn? You just think, no, that's the difference. As soon as you write a book, it's something that most business owners don't do, or most charity leaders or nonprofits don't do. It makes you stand out. And that means you can attract that visibility. You can attract sponsors. You can attract donors. That's the beauty of a book. So that's why I specialized in books.
Well, I think so many people have a book in them, but they're afraid to write a book. At least I have certain friends that have extraordinary things to say, and they just are afraid to take that first step.
There's something that happens. I'll tell you what, I didn't envisage when I became a book publisher. I didn't realize I ended up having to be a bit of a motivational coach as well. I didn't realize that was going to be part of my job description, but I've now published 16 authors. And there's even the most, self-assured of them at some point in the book journey started to have imposter syndrome. And it's something that happens. It does happen. But what I would say is, especially if you're a vegan, plant-based, ethical entrepreneur, it's bigger than you. I would say you need to kind of get over it a little bit. I always say, look at me, think of me as an example. It's no coincidence that I chose copywriting and ghostwriting. People who choose copywriting and ghostwriting don't like the limelight. That's why we like writing for other people. Everyone else can get the glory. We're happy just to write and get paid, and that's it. And yet I've now forced myself into the limelight because of the cause, because I realize there's all of these amazing vegans doing incredible things, but they're not getting any of the visibility that they deserve, whether they're a business, whether they're a charity, whether they're a nonprofit, and they're struggling, and it's not fair. So I had to come into the limelight myself, and I had to force myself to enjoy it. And if it wasn't for the cause, I probably wouldn't have done it. So I think it's a case of, it is uncomfortable, but the way I would phrase it is, first of all, the movement needs you. I was listening to one of your earlier shows where you had John Robbins from Diet for a New America on, and he was saying, somebody wrote a letter, saying, oh my God, your book really affected me. I'm going to eat a little less bacon. And he said he was a little bit upset for it. It's like, oh my God, you're just going to eat a little less bacon. But then he said, well, you don't know where that person is. And that's still a benefit. It's still the fact that they're going to eat less is a good thing. Well, think about it this way. Think about if we suddenly tomorrow we had so many more vegan authors. Think of the impact. Even if each book just affects one person, think of the impact that's going to have overall. So I would say, yeah, it's difficult. Having someone like me in your corner, I will make it the process as easy and as step by step. That's my role as a book consultant, but it still involves effort. I'm not going to, I'm not going to beat around the bush and say, oh my God, you won't have to do anything. You just turn up and suddenly your book will happen. Of course, you're going to have to put some time and effort into it and follow my structure, but it's so worth it. Every single author I've worked with, once they've done it, they're just so proud. You can see they really feel this sense of accomplishment that you just don't feel when you create, have a website created, or, all the typical business, or organization paraphernalia. It really is something. One of my authors said something that was really fantastic, which I never thought of it before. She said, not only does it make me feel accomplished, it makes me feel like I really now understand my entire business. Because when she actually went through the process, she realized she had little gaps of knowledge within a business that she had to plug. So by the time she finished the book, not only did she feel accomplished, she felt like I can actually go and talk about any aspect of my business at any time at the drop of a hat now. So it gave her it just gave her this incredible confidence in herself. So yeah, you're meant to feel a little bit of imposter syndrome. I think that's the thing. You're meant to feel a little bit of it, but as long as you don't let it kill you, as long as you don't let it stop you from doing what you should be doing, I promise you, once you get to the other side, it's going to be one of those things that you'll remember for life. One of my favorite moments is when I always get all my authors when they get their first copy of their book. And I always tell them, can you please send me a picture of you opening the box? And they all send me a picture and they have the cheesiest grin on their face with their book. But it's a moment that you remember for the rest of your life, your first book. And some of them then go on to write even more books. But they always tell me that first book, it means a lot. I mean, I'm sure you've written books. I'm sure you remember the very first book, how you felt. It just gives you that self-assuredness, like I really do know what I'm talking about. I really am an expert at this,
Yeah, absolutely. Because you said something in the book about the difference between being an expert and being a salesperson.
It really is. A lot of people kind of think that it's separate, and salespeople instantly, as soon as you say the word, you kind of go, oh, I don't like salespeople. But the thing is, experts are selling to us all the time, but we just don't even see them as salespeople. And that's the difference. When we think of salespeople, we're thinking of pushy people. We're thinking of people who've got sales quotas that they need to meet. They need to make a certain amount of commission every month. And they don't really care about whether you need something, what you want, what your goals are. That's what we envisage. When we think of an expert, we think of they're these wonderful people who are helping you, but actually they're selling things. Most of the times when you go to an expert, they're actually selling you something, but they do it in such a way that you don't feel like you're speaking to a salesperson. You feel like you're speaking to an expert. And that's one of the key things that happen when you become a published author. It's something that happens inside you. What I just spoke about before, you become more self-assured. You feel more accomplished. So you know deep down that you are an expert. And that comes across in all of your interactions. And people start to see you as an expert. And you're no longer selling them stuff, you're helping them by introducing your programs, your products, your services.
I remember when my first book came out, I was speaking at the McDougall Advanced Study Weekend, and I had spoken for Dr. McDougall like 2 or 3 years previously, and it was very nice. But having a book made such a big difference because there was like now 100 people in line that wanted to talk to me.
Because the daft thing is, the strange thing is, were you really any better at what you do before or after? Exactly. It's all perception. That's the crazy thing. I remember one gentleman who wrote a book with me, and he was only 8 months into his business at the time. He's working in a corporate role, and he was a part-time executive coach, and he wrote a book with me. And after the book came out, within a year, he was charging somewhere in the region of 3 to 5 times what his peers were charging, who had several years more experience than him. But this is what I mean. It's all about perception. Now, we can get into a whole debate about whether that's right or wrong. I mean, what can I say? That's human nature. All I can say is I know how it works. And the thing is, perception is everything. And, I'm sure you are amazing at what you did before you wrote a book. It's not like suddenly you wrote a book and you were 10 times better at what you did. And yet the perception is, wow, this lady really is an expert. So you've now got more visibility and more people interested in speaking to you.
Absolutely. So is your book just for somebody that wants to be an author, or could it help somebody maybe that wanted to be a blogger, or a podcaster, a YouTuber, a health coach, for example?
My book is really mainly to do with books, and I'll tell you why. There's something, I kind of already touched on this. There's something different about books because it's not usual. I said just 10 minutes ago, I was talking about this exercise that I do where I get people to stand up depending on whether they have a website. Well, the thing is, most people have blogs. Most people are using LinkedIn for their business. Most people have websites. Most people are shooting videos now for their business. So there's no differentiating point. The book is what differentiates you. I don't care what sector you're in. You could be a lawyer, you could be an accountant, you could be an engineer. It doesn't matter what sector you're in. Most of you will have websites. Most of you will be using social media. Most of you will be using all the typical business paraphernalia. But I bet you can count on one hand how many authors you know there. So the book really is all about how to leverage the authority and the expert status you get because you're an author, because it's so unusual. So it is really to do with helping people leverage a book.
Got it. Do you think anybody can write a book, Mitali, if they have the right skills or strategies, or is it really only for a select few?
I believe everyone can write a book, and that's why I'm such a big fan of self-publishing. It's a double-edged sword, unfortunately, with self-publishing. It does mean that every idiot now goes and publishes some. I've seen some horrendous books on Amazon where I just think, who on earth thought this was okay to publish? It's terrible. So it's a double-edged sword. But the good side of self-publishing is, you don't have this authority telling you whether you're good enough. I mean, traditionally, I always use the very famous example of Beatrix Potter, who self-published her very first book because women in that time, women weren't intelligent enough to write children's books, which blows my mind because children, women were the main caregivers of children. So what are you talking about? But she had to self-publish her own book because no publisher would touch her because she was a woman writing children's stories. So there is a history all over the world of you looking right when it comes to becoming a published author. And that's traditionally been white, male, middle-aged or older. And if you don't fit those criteria, your chances of publishing start to diminish. And what I love about self-publishing is we can just throw the rule books out now and just say, well, if I've got something to say, I'm going to say it. So yeah, I believe that everyone can. You need to follow certain rules because you need to make sure that your book hits a certain standard. But I mean, there's loads of resources on my website for that. I mean, I'm working with a gentleman at the moment who's quite, I would say, moderate dyslexia. So, and the fact he's going to be a published author by the end of the summer. So there are means and ways. What I always say is don't get caught up on things that are not your expertise. So, for example, I meet a lot of people who want to write a book, but they say my grammar's terrible. They've got these, they'll tell me about a time where, their English teacher at school told them they were useless and they'd never be a good writer and that sort of thing. And I will say you're worrying about things that you shouldn't be worrying about. The only thing that you should be worrying about is, do you have something to say? That is the bit that I can't, as good a book consultant as I am, that's the bit that I can't help you with. If you don't really have something to say, if you don't have a real mission, if you don't have a real voice, something that you really want to do for the vegan plant-based movement, that I can't give you, unfortunately. Everything else, we can sort that out. We have wonderful editors. I can teach you how to write in such a way that you're not always in a passive voice and you're in an active voice. And once you get it, I only give my clients 14 English rules. And if they just follow these 14 English rules, their English is going to be good enough. And I've had people say, oh my God, I wish I knew these 14 rules at school. Why don't they teach these 14 rules at school? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me why they don't teach. They should be teaching these 14 rules at school, and everybody will be able to write clear, concise English. But I don't know why they don't do it. But I'll give you the 14 rules of clear, concise English. You just follow this, and that's fine. All the technical stuff, there are wonderful people like me and my team who can take care of it for you. What you should be concentrating on is, what's your message? What's your mission? Is that strong enough? That's the only thing you should be worrying about. See, if you've got that in spades, you don't have to worry about anything else. The rest will all come.
Right. We have a great question from a live viewer named Gina, and she has asked, let me find her question. Is there a difference in impact of an ebook versus a paper book?
Yes. Oh gosh, Gina, I'm glad you asked that. Yes. Huge. So just a few minutes ago, I talked about the double-edged sword that is self-publishing. Wonderful thing is it's so egalitarian. If you've got something to say, you can just say it now. The flip side of that is there are people who are now just abusing that, and I've seen people just literally tack together 50 blog posts and publish it, and they're calling themselves an author. I'm thinking you're not a real author, and everyone knows they're not a real author. So because of that, because you have these idiots doing that, it does mean that if you just publish on ebook, you run the risk that someone might think, oh, it's just one of these free lead magnet-y type of things that people give away on websites. It's not a real book. And then you run the risk of not being seen as a real author. And then you miss out on all the benefits I've been talking about that differentiation point of you being seen as an authority, as an expert above your peers. You're not going to get that I hope that makes sense. So what I do with my clients is we always publish on ebook and paperback. Now, what you'll find, Gina, is most people still download the ebook. I would say with my book, more than 90% of my sales, actually, I think it's close to 95% of my sales is ebook. It's not the paperback. So it's not like I'm selling loads of the paperback, but it's there just to give that confidence that, oh, this is a real book, because there's a paperback version as well. What you tend to find with a lot of ebooks that don't do a paperback version is because it's not long enough to justify a paperback. It will look stupid. It would look like a weedy booklet or a pamphlet, so they don't bother. Plus, they don't want to go through, they don't want to hire a typesetter to format it properly, and they just don't want to go through that expense. So they just upload it as an ebook because it's relatively simple and easy to do. And that's why people think that's not a real book. So I would say, even though the vast majority of any book sales will be the ebook, it's always makes sense to have a paperback or a hardback, just a tangible version next to it. And the way Amazon put them together, and on Ingram Spark as well, is they're usually side by side, which is the wonderful thing. So you can see the ebook and you can see the paperback version, and then people will buy the ebook version, but it gives them that subconscious feeling of, this is a real book, this is a real author. I hope that's answered your question, Gina.
Yeah, it was a great question. And there's another live viewer who says, do you help vegans publish fiction books like novels, or just nonfiction books?
I can help them publish. I can't coach them. So I'm a book consultant and publisher. So what I do is I take people right from the early stages of researching their book idea, making sure it is a good idea, because some people come to me with, oh my God, the best idea ever. And I'm like, okay, let's just research it and make sure it's the best idea. And some of them then find out that their idea really wasn't the best idea, and their audience wants a completely different book. And I always say it's best that we find that out now, rather than much later on, when you spent a lot of time and energy and money publishing a book that no one actually wanted to read. So I take them from research through planning, through writing, through full developmental edit. And then I have my own team of vegan editors, designers, typesetters who take the manuscript and turn it into a published book. If you're wanting to write fiction, I can do the publishing side of it, as in editing, the cover design, typesetting. I can do that. However, I wouldn't be able to coach you through that because I don't have an experience of it. And my moral compass says, I can't charge for something that I don't have experience of. I was a ghostwriter. I've written 7 books as a ghostwriter. I've written my own book, The Freedom Master Plan, as an author, and all 17 of my clients who are now published authors, they've written nonfiction, self-help, how-to, business style guide books, not fiction. So I don't have experience of that. But certainly if he came to me with a manuscript and he said, hey, can you just help me publish this to a professional publishing standard? I can definitely do that.
Great. And Randy, who's watching live, says, what about audiobooks?
Audiobooks are a great idea. I'm actually going to the studio in September to do my audiobook. Audiobooks are fantastic. Again, not so much. Some people think, well, do you make a lot of money from audiobooks? You can make a little bit more money because there's an expectation that audiobooks, you should pay more. the perception is that there's more value in it. With a paperback book, for example, you'd struggle, especially when it's black and white, you would struggle to charge more than $10, or here in the UK, £10. With ebook, even less. A Kindle book, people start complaining if it's more than $5 or £5. With an audiobook, there's this expectation that it should be at least $15, £15, and usually 20 or more. So there is more of a profit margin there. But for me, that isn't the reason why I'm looking forward to going to studios and recording it. For me, it's the reach I'm going to get. There's so many people out there who either don't like reading books. I know I find it strange because I love books myself, but there are these people out there who really, really don't like reading books. And there's also people who love reading books, but literally don't have the time to sit down and read a book. The wonderful thing about an audiobook is they could be walking their dog, they could be getting on with their cleaning, their ironing, and they could be listening to you. So for that reason, the reach that you can get, I remember it's all about visibility. I keep coming back down to the word visibility. When you become an author and then you do things like create an audiobook, is you just get a far bigger reach, which means you start getting invited to, for example, Chef AJ's awesome program. She says, hey, come and be on my show. Things like this happen when you become an author. So more people hear about what you've got to do, hear about your message, your mission. And an audiobook is a fantastic way of reaching people who don't have the time or just don't like reading books. So I would say audiobooks, absolutely 100%. Make sure you create one.
But you have to have a written book to create an audiobook, right? I
mean,
you don't just, you have to first write the book.
I wouldn't do it the other way around. That would be a bit odd. It would cost you a lot of money in studio time as well, because you'll be thinking while you're, don't do it that way. Write a book that, exactly. I should be done they booked me in for 2 days, but they said there's a chance they'll probably be done in 1 day, because all I'm doing is just reading my book. So don't do it the other way around. Write your book, then create your audio book.
Okay. So this has nothing to do with book publishing, but so many people keep asking, what kind of bindi are you wearing?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I've actually drawn this myself with eyeliner. I've actually just drawn it myself. It doesn't really mean anything. I like it because I'm a big believer in my third eye. I've noticed that when things are not right in my life, I start to feel pain around here as well. So I wouldn't say I was a hugely spiritual person, but there's something going on here and something above my navel here as well. Those two places are where I seem to feel when something's not right in my life, or something's not right with a person. I've just felt uneasy about a person. I thought, I don't know what it is about you. There's something about you I really don't like, so I'm going to escape now. It's usually something that happens here, and something's happening in my navel, which is why I have a tattoo on my navel of the sign, and I always wear this. Apart from that, I just like it. I just like wearing it. It doesn't really mean, it means whatever meaning you want to give it. The only significance is I shouldn't wear red. It should never be colored red unless you're married, and I'm not married. So I'm allowed to wear whatever color I want. I'm just very boring. I just stick with black because it works with everything. But some girls will change it up depending on what they're wearing, just like they would with their makeup or their accessories. The only rule is you shouldn't really wear red, because red symbolizes a married woman.
I did not realize that. I recently saw a man with a red dot. Does that mean that he's married, or?
No. See, again, this is the difference. Again, it's interpretation. When you go to the temple, that's a completely different thing. You are given, it's a specific powder that's mixed in with water, and usually the guru blesses you with it. In that case, then I could wear that red dot, but I shouldn't wear a stylized bindi that's red in my culture. Having said that, though, I've spoken to Indians in other parts of India who said, no, you can wear red, because what they do is the actual the ingredient, I suppose you can call it, is called sindoor. It's like a red powder, and you mix it with water. And what in some parts of India do is they put it through your parting. So married women will wear it through their parting, and then in those cultures, Unmarried women are allowed to wear red dots or red bindis as long as they don't have it in their parting. So I always say you've got to think of India as a continent. There's over 1 billion people there. You can fit most of Europe into India. So think of the differences between the British and the Italian, for example. Huge differences. Well, there's huge differences between Indians. So in my culture, part of the world that I come from, which is Bangladesh, which is not even part of India, it's a separate country altogether, and Assam, which is part of India, that is how it works. But in other parts of India, they will have their own interpretations of it.
Nice.
I wish I could give you a simple answer there, but it wasn't a simple answer.
Well, a lot of people were asking, so thank you. Tiffany, who's watching live, says, do you receive a percentage of your clients' books, and what do you charge? And if you want, I can just give her your email if you don't want to answer that.
No, you can. I absolutely don't mind. You can send them to my website where they can follow the details and my email, or find me on social media. I'm always available. Just come and find me, especially with a ridiculously long surname like that. You're going to find me. There's not many other Deypurkaysthas out there. I don't take a percentage because I think that's wrong. Okay. The reason I know there are publishers out there who do that. It's a way for them to create residual income, I guess. But the way I see it is, what I'm helping somebody create is a clever sales and marketing tool for their business, their nonprofit, their charitable organization, whatever it is. In the same way that you wouldn't want your web designer to hold your website hostage. I mean, you can have a web designer create your website, and then if they say something like, hey, I can host it for you, and you pay, that's different. They're providing a separate service. Hosting the website, that's cool. But imagine if they just expected you to pay them something monthly for the rest of time because they created a website for you. It's like, well, no, you've done your job. You've given me the website. Why would I carry on paying you? So for that reason, no, I don't charge anything like that, because the way I see it is, I'm helping you as your consultant and publisher go from book idea to published author. Once that's done, and I've got you set up on Amazon, and I've got you set up on Ingram Spark, that's the second platform that I put you on, I hand over the reins to you. It's your asset now to do whatever you want. And I even have authors who come to me and, they say things like, oh, I decided to add a new thing onto my cover. I had one lady who wanted to add this ribbon because she'd won an award. She'd won a book award. So the second edition of a book, she wanted to add a ribbon onto the cover, and she was just able to do that herself. Now, imagine if I tied her into a contract, she would have to come to me. I probably would have charged her when she could have just done it herself. Yeah, I don't like that. There's a lot of publishers that do that. The way I see it is, there's a clear cut for me. Either you are helping somebody self-publish, which is what I do. So what you're doing with me is you're getting the best of both worlds. You're self-publishing, so you're not beholden to any publisher. It's entirely your book to do with and change whenever you want. It's your asset. But you have the best of both worlds. You're having that, but also you have someone who knows the traditional publishing process. So make sure you're not making any mistakes, and you're creating something that is worth your reputation and doesn't damage your reputation. Okay. And so that's self-publishing. And then you have a traditional publisher. What a traditional publisher does is they pay for your professional services. So they pay for your editing, your typesetting, your cover design, your publishing. But then because they paid usually several $1,000s or pounds, they then own your book for a certain length of time, usually about 3 to 5 years. And then they do take the lion's share of the profits on the book, and they pay you royalties. But that's only fair because they paid for all of your professional services. For me, in my head, that is a very clear cut. You're either helping somebody self-publish, or you are paying for their professional services, and therefore you own the book. When I start seeing publishers doing this halfway house thing, where they're getting people to pay, but then they're also tying them into a contract, it just doesn't sit well with me, because I just think, you're kind of giving somebody the worst of both worlds, aren't you? You're kind of acting like a traditional publisher when it comes to your profits, but you're not giving them benefits of going with a traditional publisher. It's the worst of both worlds, basically. So no, I don't take any cut or anything like that.
Great, thank you. Callie wants to know, what do you think of CreateSpace?
Well, it's now known as KDP. So that's, yeah, I have, this is a difficult one. So Amazon as a company, I have a lot of issues with. I think they're quite irresponsible. I hate the fact that they're based in Liechtenstein, I believe, to pay no taxes, which is ridiculous. And of course, you know, they're sending so much product to landfill, and yeah, you know, I have issues with them as a company. However, to ignore them as a book retailer is suicidal. It's something that I struggle with. I would love to not use Amazon. It'd be amazing if I didn't have to use Amazon. But latest statistics show, depending on who you listen to, somewhere between 65 to over 80% of all books sold in the world go through Amazon. So when you say no to Amazon, you're instantly stifling your reach. And that means less people hear about your mission, your movement, and the less momentum the vegan movement has and the plant-based movement. So I've had to kind of reconcile that in my brain and say, I'm going to have to be okay with Amazon, despite still being vehemently against some of the things that they do, because I know to get the vegan movement to where I want it to be, I kind of have to use them. So that's where I stand with it. They're known as KDP now, Create Spaces. They've stopped using that term a few years ago now, so it's KDP. But yes, all of my clients, I always recommend they should publish on KDP because of the reach. You cut out Amazon, you've cut out somewhere between 65 to over 80% of your reach. That's huge.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so one of the things I really thought was really interesting in your book, you talked about how coming up with content on social media, that, you know, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time. You wrote that with a book, you could hop off the content generation treadmill for good. Can you tell me what that means? Because I get really exhausted with social media.
Don't we all? Don't we all? What I mean by that is, you know, what a lot of people are doing on social media, I've been there myself, is you know, you get to Monday and it's like, oh God, I need to write something for LinkedIn. What do I write about? What do I write about? And then you put something together and you think, okay, that was quite good. Then it's now Thursday and you're thinking, because people are telling you should be posting 3-4 times a week. It's now Thursday and you're thinking, I need to do another post now. And you're thinking again, once you've written a book, you kind of have, in a nutshell, what your business is about, or at least the main points of your business. You can now reuse that information. So and you'll see this on my social media. One of the biggest compliments I get is, you're always on social media. We see you everywhere all the time. And I then tell them, I actually spend less than an hour a week on social media. I don't actually spend much time on social media at all. I've got a publishing company to run. So why am I going to have the time to spend loads of my time and energy on social media? What I did was, once I wrote my book, I then got somebody to go through it and strip it into smaller social media posts. So there's some of them are long form, some of them are short for tweets. I even had one lady who then took the information and started to create images for Instagram. And, you know, we haven't even touched the sides yet. At the moment, I'm quite active on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, which people think is amazing. It's like, oh my God, you're really active on 4 different platforms. It's not me. It's because the work's already been done in my book. And then I just got someone to create all of these posts from the book. I haven't even started on Pinterest. I'm ready to go on Pinterest. That's on my forever growing to-do list, but I've already got all the posts ready to go on Pinterest because I've got loads of images that were created. So what it does is it frees you up. And now what happens is, sometimes I'll just be inspired to create a post. Maybe I've had a great conversation with my client. I just think, oh, that's really good. I need to create a post on that. Or I'll just shoot a video about something and then I'll put something on. But there's no, oh God, it's Monday, I need to post something, because I've already got posts. And I've got something called Social Bee. It's a software that I use that just sends the posts out automatically. It's a bit like Hootsuite, similar to Hootsuite. And it just means that I have that presence on social media without thinking every day, oh my God, what am I going to write? That doesn't mean that's it. You should never write again. Of course you should, if you're inspired by something, that's so organic, something happens in the world and you want to let people know about it, of course, write about it. But you just don't have that. And I speak to so many people who, they're forcing themselves to write 3 or 4 posts a week because they've heard that's the optimal number that they want to write, but they hate it. And it's like, I never know what to write. And I'm sat there looking at this blank screen for half an hour, trying to figure out what to come up with. You don't have to worry about that. You've already done it. You've done it once. And I say that in my book, once you put the work in once, it's there now for you to use. And you'll notice a lot of my posts on social media, you'll then say, oh, she says that in her book. That's where it comes from.
That's funny. They would have had to read your book to know that. Cheryl, who's watching live, says, well, how much per book do people usually make?
With these books, not a lot. And I say this in my book as well. One of the key learnings in my book is to understand that the book is not the business. Okay. The book is a clever sales and marketing tool so you can make more money in the other things that you do. Or if you're a nonprofit or a charitable organization, you get more donors, you get more money being sent to you, you get more funding. Yeah. That's where the money is. I would say with my book, which is actually sold quite well, considering, I think the first edition came out in March. The second edition that you have, Chef AJ, that came out just a few weeks ago. In total, I think I made somewhere in the region of maybe $8,000 in over a year. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't live on $8,000 in a year. That's just not going to work. However, what this has done is allow me to create a hugely successful publishing business. That's where the money is. The money is in people wanting to work with me, people wanting to write a book with me. That's where I'm making the money, not specifically from the books. In fact, I've even got it set up so every month, a particular separate account, not my main business account, gets this money that comes from KDP and actually goes off to charity, because I'd rather just give that money away to charity. That's not what I'm in it for. So I would say it's understanding which book business you're getting into. There are 2 distinct book businesses. There is the book is the business, if that makes sense. That's usually what traditional publishers are in. That's the business model that they are in. So their goal is to sell as many copies of your book at the highest profit margin as possible so they can make the most money. But this one, the business that I'm in, is the book is a sales and marketing tool to get you more visibility, to get you on podcasts, to turn you into a keynote speaker if you wish, to do all those things so you start attracting higher ticket clients or you start attracting funding or sponsors. That's where the money is, not from the book. Because the book, I always say, there's nothing wrong with being in the book business, but you're now in a high volume business model. We touched on it earlier. There's not much that you can charge for a book. It's annoying because books are life-changing. The number of times I've spoken to people who've read a book, and so many people have become vegan because they read a book. They read something, like Diet for a New America, and they're just like, oh my God, I can't do this. And they became vegan. So we all know books are life-changing, and yet we start complaining if we're charged more than $5 or £5 for an ebook and more than $10 or £10 for a paperback book. Think of how many units you need to sell just to make a comfortable living. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it's a hard slog. Unless you've already made it. If you're a celebrity of some sort, if Tom Cruise wrote a book tomorrow, yeah, of course he's got to make a ton of money because he's Tom Cruise. But if you don't have that kind of followers, and it's hard work, which is why I always advocate for all of my clients, like, don't be looking at book sales. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at using your book to leverage it, to give you that authority status, for you to be seen as the go-to person in that niche, above and beyond your competitors. What you said before, Chef AJ, about, as soon as you wrote the book, suddenly there's all these people who want to speak to you. You weren't actually any better at what you do, but suddenly you just had this visibility. That's where the money is, not the actual book. I hope that that's answered the question.
Right. And I can't speak to what everybody makes per book, but I can tell you that people with publishers don't make very much. I have so many friends in the vegan world that make as little as 40 cents per book with the biggest name publishers that you can imagine.
And when we're talking HarperCollins, Penguin Random House, tiny royalties.
It's amazing that even when they're at their top of their game and have proven they can sell, they're making like $1 a book. So that's not why. I mean, like maybe if you're Dinar Kuntz and sell 1 million copies, you might make some money, but no.
It's so true. You just got to think. You got to think you're in the volume business, and you have to sell the units of $5 and $10. And then you've had to pay the publisher, you've got to pay Amazon their fees. There's not much left for you at the end, so it's a lot of work. I'm not saying you can't be successful. I'm just saying be prepared to really just go for it, because put it this way, I'm not prepared to do it. I didn't do it with my book.
Right.
So,
well, Mitali, what advice would you give somebody that knows they want to write a book, but they don't know what to write about?
Oh, you're my favorite people. I love this. You're my favorite. People assume as a book consultant that I'd be happier when people come to me with a fully fledged book idea. Actually, I prefer it when people come to me and say, I've got a lot to say, but I actually don't know what the angle is going to be, because then it's fun. We can go through a process and I have step-by-step processes that will get you to analyze your audience and find out exactly from them what you should write about. And I think that's a much better place to be, because the flip side of that is I have some people who come to me with what they believe is the best book idea ever. And then I've even had a couple of clients who wanted to skip the research steps because they said, oh no, I know my audience. It's fine. And then I have to be like, okay, but you're paying for the service. So can we just go through the steps anyway? Because you're paying for the whole thing. You're paying for, to me to help you with the research, the planning, the writing, the developmental editing, the done for you services with my vegan team. You're paying for the whole thing. So let's just do it. So they reluctantly went, oh, okay, let's do this. We've gone through the process. And then they found out that their brilliant book idea wasn't that brilliant at all. That's not actually what their audience wanted. And I just said to them, are you now happy that we actually did this? Imagine if we'd skipped this. You've gone through all that time and effort and money with someone like me to write a book and publish a book that your audience didn't really want. So I would say if you don't know what you're going to write about, this is wonderful, because that means you're open. You're open to learning about your audience and what they want from you. Surely that's a much better place to be. I always say, if you can find a need and then serve that need, that is so much better than creating something and then trying to find that need in a group of people. That's a really long-winded way of trying to find success. You can have far more immediate success when you just serve a need that's already there.
Right. So let's say if somebody that knows what they want to write, what's the next step for them?
Well, the first step is research, really, and be honest. I think sometimes this is not just books, this is like business as well. I've met so many entrepreneurs who they thought they had the next best invention. If we have something called Dragon's Den over here, I think it's Shark Tank for you guys. And we see that a lot, don't we? People come up as like, and then you've got these sharks, or in our case, dragons are going, but this isn't a business. No one wants this, but that person's like, no, this is the best thing ever. But they didn't research their audience. So I would say put your beliefs or what you think your audience needs to one side and go and ask them. You'll be amazed. People love giving their opinions. Sometimes even when you don't want them to give you their opinion, they're still going to give you their opinion. People love giving opinions. So ask your audience, poll them, send them a survey, get them to tell you where are the gaps in their knowledge, or what is it that they want to learn. And then you can serve that need. So that is the first step. Put any because you can have misconceptions sometimes. And I tend to find this, especially with people who've been in business for a while, they seem to assume that they really, really know their audience. And it's like, it's always good just to check in with your audience, because new members have come into your audience and they may be in it for a different reason than you think. So it's always worth asking. And I do this periodically with my email list. I will send an email saying, hey, so where are you? And why did you come into, the vegan publisher? And sometimes those answers will surprise me, like, I didn't realize that's why they were attracted to me. I didn't realize that's why they were thinking of writing a book. So it always makes sense to just always stay in touch with your audience and ask some questions, survey them, make sure that you get concrete evidence that your book idea is something your audience wants to hear from you.
Right. That's great. Well, Linda says this is priceless information and education. And so is this book. Guys, I've been posting a link. This is a really great book. It is not hard to read. And I think you guys should read it, especially if you're interested in getting your message out there. So one of the things I thought, you have a lot of great tools in the book, but one of them, you called it the Authority Catalyst Speech Template. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This is something that I put together because I'm not a natural speaker. I know you're probably thinking, when you've been speaking for over an hour, you seem fine. You should see the very first live that I did on Facebook about 2 years ago. I couldn't even look at the camera properly. I took myself for a walk because I thought if I'm walking and doing a live, people won't expect me to look directly into the camera because I might walk into a lamppost. So therefore, I don't have to look into the camera. So that's how nervous I was doing a live. And then over nearly 2 years, I've forced myself to get good at it because I spoke about this before. The movement is bigger than me. And I know I needed to contribute to the vegan and plant-based movement more than what I had been doing, which is just abstaining from using animal products. And this is my activism. What I'm doing is my activism. So I had to get over myself a little bit, get out of my own way, and start enjoying the limelight. The template that I created has helped me create some really good speeches. And when I'm not the inventor of it, I have to admit that this comes from other people who went before me. But I'll give you in a nutshell what this template is. And I remember when someone told me this, something clicked and I went, is that all it is? And he went, yes, that's all it is. If you just remember this, you'll be fine. And he said, there's only 3 parts to a great speech. The first part is you tell them what you're going to tell them. The second part is you tell them. And the third part is you tell them what you've told them.
I know. That's the first thing you and I was.
My mind was blown when I heard that. I was like, no, it can't be that simple. He's like, no, go on. And he's like, go and watch TEDx talks. Go and watch these amazing speakers who are getting millions of views. And you will see the same pattern. And I started to do that. And I was like, oh my God, that's all they're doing. All they're doing is they're telling them what they're going to tell them. Then they're telling them, and then they're telling them what they've just told them. And that's a speech. And it was it was a revelatory moment for me. And it made my speeches so much better. So that's why I created that template. So you can use, and it's a downloadable template, and you can go in and you can just create your speech using that template. And that will then give you, having that structure is what gives you that confidence. You kind of think, okay, because otherwise I think one of the biggest fears we have is freezing up. We having all these eyes trained on you and you forgetting what you're going to say. And I think sometimes, we overdo things. I remember the very first talk that I did was only 15 minutes. But that seemed like an eternity to me. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about for 15 minutes? And I ended up creating this speech. Because I didn't have the template then, I fitted so many things into that 15 minutes. It was a lot of stuff for me to remember in my head. And that's what made me very fearful. And that was a very jumpy speech because in my head, I was trying to remember all the different points. And what I learned was that people don't want loads of points. They actually just want 2 or 3 salient points that they can remember. And if you use that technique, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you've told them, it's much easier for you to remember as well. It's less things for you to remember. So you then become more assured and confident on stage, and you become a better speaker. You become a more engaging speaker. So yeah, it definitely worked for me. And I wanted to put that in there because I know when people become an author, whether they like it or not, what ends up happening is if they start leveraging their books correctly, people do start asking them to talk. They start saying, hey, do you want to come and talk on my stage? Hey, do you want to come on my podcast? You better get comfortable with it. So I wanted to help these people because these are going to be vegan and plant-based voices. And I want as many vegan and plant-based voices to be confident enough to speak out. Because the more we speak out, the
I love that. Every vegan should write a book. Every vegan.
Yes. Every vegan should write a book, because you're just amplifying your voice. Imagine all of us. My mission statement, it's on my website. My mission statement is to create an army of vegan and ethical entrepreneurs who are just published authors, and they're everywhere. You can't move because you can't turn around. They're keynote speakers. They're on podcasts. They're on radio shows. They're on TV shows. They're everywhere. We're going to get to that vegan normal world a lot faster if that's going to happen, So that's my goal, to create that vegan army.
Yeah, I love that. Dr. McDougall has actually said that before, has to create an army. Mitali, if somebody wants to write a book, but they don't have really any selling or marketing skills, can they still be successful?
They can. And I would say read my book. So the goal of my book is to educate people on this other side of the book business, because most people who don't know this side of the book business, they only are aware of that main book business, which is, we've discussed it before, where you're in the volume business. You're just trying to sell as many copies of your book as possible. Most people aren't aware that there is an adjacent industry, a book industry, where you're not really bothered about making as many sales as possible. It's about using it as a sales and marketing tool for your business or nonprofit or charitable organization. So my book is all about that. It's case study based. It's 7 of my clients and what they did next with their book. And I found it fascinating how they were able to use their book to gain visibility, to become keynote speakers, to use it to get high ticket clients or get donors and sponsors. I would say the best advice I can give you is just go and read my book. The goal of my book was, by the end of it, you will either say, oh my gosh, I need to write a book pronto, or you will say, this isn't for me. And even that's a win, because at least you don't have to torture yourself anymore about whether you need to write a book. So my goal is that by the time you get to the end of it, you will know categorically exactly how to leverage a book, because it's all case study based. It's what my clients did in detail with their books. So then you can say, I could do that with my organization, or I could, and not all of the strategies will fit. I'm not expecting you to read the book and think that every single strategy in there is suitable for your particular situation. It won't be. There'll be certain strategies in there you go, that wouldn't work for my business, or that wouldn't work for my organization. And that's fine. It's about cherry picking the ones that you do see yourself in and going, okay, I can do that, and implementing those. But yes, everyone can be successful doing this.
That is great. Could you tell us about some of your clients and what have they done?
Right, my most recent clients. So Bobby Giudicelli, I'm very proud of Bobby. Bobby is an amazing lady. She published just in February, actually March, I think it was, of this year. And she came to me with a viewpoint that I hadn't heard of. So, being whole food plant-based for a while now has been synonymous with great physical health. I know you're a big proponent of that yourself, Chef AJ. What I hadn't heard was somebody talking how becoming whole food plant-based had allowed her to beat a 40+ year battle with anorexia and bulimia. So, Bobby had been self-harming since she was a teenager. And the only thing that stopped her for good was becoming whole food plant-based. So the book is called Freedom from a Toxic Relationship with Food, because that's how what happened with her. She got freedom from her toxic relationship with food, and it details her journey and gives people advice. And if they're suffering from anorexia and or bulimia, how they can rid themselves of their demons by becoming whole food plant-based. So she's done incredible. She actually has a business with her eldest son, and they manufacture whole food plant-based breakfast items. And the book is being used in conjunction with that to market it. So that's incredible, because when I envisaged my publishing company, I was thinking in terms of service-based entrepreneurs. I was thinking in terms of vegan coaches, fitness coaches, life coaches, executive coaches, consultants. I was thinking of service-based entrepreneurs. I never really thought a book could be used to promote a product-based business, but she's doing that right now. And she's been invited onto a local radio show, and she's gaining traction at the moment. Her goal is to speak at the Vegan Women's Summit next year. And I have every faith that she'll get there, because she's already gaining traction. So I think she's going to, start getting the attention of major summit organizers by this time next year. So that's Bobby. Amanda is another awesome, vegan author of mine. Her book, she published, it was November of last year, I think it was. I don't remember the exact dates, because I'm always helping so many different people to publish. I don't remember the exact dates. And her book is amazing. She's based here in the UK. Bobby is US based. Amanda's book is called Dare to Be Fair. I would say, even if you're in the US, I would say if you're a woman, you probably need to read this book, because again, it opened my eyes. This book is to do with women not getting pay parity. So women in the UK are still being paid less for the same job that men are doing, which is crazy in 2022. But I knew that. Okay, I already knew that. What I didn't know is something that Amanda's book talks about, is how when women leave the workforce to have children, what tends to happen is they come back part-time because they have children. In the UK, the employer has to pay the same, whatever you pay into your pension pot, the employer has to match it. If you're now working part-time, you're paying less into your pension pot. So now the employer is paying less into the pension pot. What ends up happening is women are retiring in the UK with an average of a fifth of the pension pot of the average man. Now that is okay if you're still with the guy that you had children with. But what's happening a lot nowadays is the children fly the nest, and then the couple decide to divorce. And what a lot of women are doing is they're falling into poverty when they retire. So her book is all about empowering women to start having those conversations with, if they're looking to have children, having those conversations with their husband, their boyfriend, their partner, whoever it is. And also how to have conversations with their employer regarding, well, what are you going to do about my pension? So it's a wonderful book. Now she's used that. So I just found out about a week ago, a very well-known women's organization here in the UK has just bought 3,000 copies of her book to send it out to all of their members. And she's now going around the UK. She's now working as a consultant for a couple of major corporates, helping them with their HR policy to make sure that they're fairer to women. So she's got so many different irons in the fire now. And she started off as a financial planner. Her main business is a financial planner. I have a funny feeling that in a year or maybe 2 years' time, she will gain so much traction. I expect Amanda to start advising the UK government on their policies. So that's where a book can go. As long as you get behind it and you leverage it. And like I said, my book, The Freedom Master Plan, will give you all the different tactics of how to leverage a book. You go out and do that. I mean, one of my clients said to me, and this will stay with me, he said, the book has opened doors for me that I expected, but it's also opened doors for me that I didn't even know they were there. And I thought that's a really good quote. I need to write that down somewhere. But I thought that's so true. It'll open doors for you that you wanted to open, but it'll also open doors for you to opportunities that you can't even envisage right now. There's things coming to you that you can't even envisage right now. And you think, oh my God, I never even thought my life or my career would go down this path. That's what's exciting about books.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great book. And if any of you have ever wanted to write a book or thought you should write a book or been told to write a book, I would really encourage you to read it and maybe even work with Mitali, because somebody once told me a long time ago, don't die with your music still in you. And if you have a story, a vegan story, hey, what are you waiting for?
Thank you.
I think people get scared sometimes, like that. I think it's what Dr. Doug Lisle calls the ego trap. They're afraid they're going to fail, so they don't even try. But to me, the only failure is not trying. So why not?
Absolutely. I'll leave your audience with one final thought. you don't want book writing to be completely free of imposter syndrome. And I'll tell you why. You're probably thinking you're crazy. Well, it'd be wonderful if I could just write a book and not get imposter syndrome and just be able to do it. The reason why you don't want it to be completely free of imposter syndrome and the fear of failing is if we completely got rid of the fear of failing, everyone would be doing it. I'm old enough to remember the dot-com boom. I remember back in the early noughties where if you just had a website, you just crushed it. If you had a website and your competitors didn't have a website, you crushed it. Even if it was the ugliest website in the world, you crushed it. And then guess what happened? Everyone got websites. And now now it's more of a case of you have to have one, otherwise you're not even taken seriously as a business. It's saturated now. If writing a book didn't have elements of fear and elements of imposter syndrome, then everyone would start doing it. And then guess what? You'll lose your differentiating point. So I always say I felt imposter syndrome. I know you're probably thinking, but you've written 7 books before. Why did you feel imposter syndrome writing the Freedom Mastermind? Yes, as a ghostwriter, no one saw me, no one even knew me. My name is not even in those books. I can't even tell you the names of those books because I have non-disclosure agreements in place, and I'll have my ass sued if I told you what those books are. So, it's different. But then finally writing a book with my name and picture on it, I was engulfed with imposter syndrome, but I chose to do it anyway. So I would say, suck it up, be grateful if you're feeling any fear. It usually means you're on the path. You're on the right path and you're going to that next level of greatness, because no one ever achieved anything without feeling some sort of fear or some sort of, oh my God, is this right? We've all been there. That's how you achieve greatness.
Yeah, right. Well, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this has been wonderful. And really, even I have a guest every day. I haven't missed a show in like 1,050 shows. And my husband really, really did read this book and he enjoyed it as well. So thank you so much for what you do. And also just thank you for being vegan. And thanks to that little cat that started it all.
I know, Isha, my savior, my savior. Before, I always say I used to be one of these annoying people who had to have rest. I had blue steak. My favorite place was somewhere where you had to sign a waiver form because the steak was so rare, you can get ill from it. That's how rare my steak was. And then Isha came into my life, and that was it. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. So yeah, I owe everything to her.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you, Mitali. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow. We have 2 shows for Father's Day. At 2 p.m., we are going to reveal who won the Nutra Milk machine, and we're going to play all the videos of the submissions. And at 11 o'clock, we have Healthy Emmy with her daddy, Healthy Daddy, and they're going to be doing a food demo. Take care, Mitali. It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you.